Oh yeah, and how are we going to know if we're leading a better life? Who's going to tell us? Who knows enough to tell us? The government? The news? They always seem to get us to focus on something other than the practicality of our reality. We need to know what's happening, how does it affect us, and quit the other non-related bullshit. And whenever they start defining stuff, you know we're in trouble because they're either going to twist words around or make stuff up. And if they ever use someone with an English accent to explain it, look out. I mean, us average Joes have trouble figuring out what's happening anymore, whether it's in our personal lives or our economy. Like, are we heading for another recession or are we in one right now? Of course, a lot of it depends on who the we is we're talking about. But you know, for all practical purposes, our reality is that it's a recession when you lose your job and a depression when I lose mine. And while those are the only definitions that have a direct impact and effect on us, to figure out the country's economic health, we need to know how many other people are out of work. But we could have figured out that when we were in a recession a long time ago. I know I go into a depression every time I think I'm in a recession. Of course, the government didn't want us to know, because then we'd wonder how they got us in and how they were going to get us out, and how many people are really out of work, and we'd want to know. I heard they did a public opinion survey to find out 7% unemployment is acceptable to 93% of the population. Wow, go figure. That's the info they use so they can phrase things that gets us thinking that everything's okay. It's like they have it down to a science that they can tell you to go to hell in such a way you actually look forward to the trip. And what do we know anyway? The government's so far removed from where I am in my life, half the time I have no idea what's going on and what's going to happen in the future. And the scary thing is that I think the government's in the same boat. Think about it. They were manipulating our financial system, making enormous profits for their friends, gambling with our future right in the middle of a recession that they were causing to make worse. Because according to their definition of recession, we weren't in one. I mean, 2 negative quarters. What the hell does that mean anymore? And what did it mean to begin with? What I'm saying is, times have changed. It's about time they at least came up with another definition we can all understand. I mean, think back. Remember, we'd leave the house in the morning with $20 in our pocket. We'd fill up our cars with 6, spend another 5 on groceries, go home and pay our utility bills, mortgage, and car payments with the money we had in our checking account. And then start the next day with $9 in our pocket. Now, we fill up our cars with $50 by zipping in a credit card without even thinking, and pay at the grocery store with the same card, and then go home and pay utility bills, mortgage, and even our car payment that they talked us into buying a new car with it, with the same credit, even without worrying about how much money's in our bank account. So that's what I'm saying. Times have changed, but the formulas haven't. They're using the same formulas. They weren't taking into account our personal debt that they were encouraging with new houses and new cars and borrowing money and everything that affects our ability over time to pay everyday bills. When it came out the other day, they think our personal debt is probably over $4 trillion. So we were in a personal recession long before they admitted the country was. And yet we had people spending money like there was no tomorrow because Bush said everything was great. Of course, it was great for the corporations because we were buying their stuff on credit. That's how the stock market goes up. We're buying on credit. And when interest rates are low, us folks will borrow more, buying more, and helping business more as personal debt increases. And our elected officials take credit for improving the economy? I mean, we don't have the time to figure out if what they're telling us is true. So I guess we got to believe them. Like when they started spending that stimulus money to create new jobs? Wow, I had visions of businesses sprouting up all over the place, providing all kinds of jobs. Don't forget, we were talking about spending over $1 trillion. Do I keep saying trillion? It's amazing that just a few years ago, I hardly ever used the word billion. Now it sounds like that's a drop in the bucket. Anyway, so then we find out that they're using the stimulus that's supposed to be used to create jobs. to bail out a lot of big corporations to make sure they didn't get hurt under the guise we didn't want them to lay off workers. No wonder the stock market goes up when our finances are going down. It's because the government takes care of them. Yeah, so they create and define a new economic term to explain how all that money got spent without creating new jobs. And they called it jobs saved. And now they're able to take credit for all those jobs saved because no one could tell whether they did or not. And I kept thinking that these guys must know what they're doing. I mean, Obama kept calling them geniuses. I mean, can you imagine how bad things would have been if they weren't that smart? Oh, man. But maybe they're just lazy. It seems like a lot of folks have that impression of government. I mean, look what's happening. Illegal aliens getting tax refunds, inmates collecting unemployment, even people working for city government in Washington, D.C. receiving unemployment checks while they're working right under their noses. And that was before D.C. legalized pot. Now I'm sure things will definitely improve. And then we find out that Obama is spending as much time golfing as he is spending going to cabinet meetings, and he hasn't even been attending his intelligence briefings. You know, you take direction from your leader. And lazy is as lazy does. But no matter how lazy everybody is, you'd still think that somebody in government would stumble on a good idea now and then. Even somebody inept or corrupt will want to look good at some point to take attention away from what they're doing. So it's interesting to listen as they go back and forth on issues, like what to do about the increasing number of people who really can't find jobs, and what to do with people who have jobs but can't survive on a minimum wage. I mean, just listen to them talk. It's fascinating. Come on, guys, quit kicking the can down the road and figure something out. That's why we elected you. You know, the private sector thinks of new ideas all the time. That's how they go into business, and that's how they stay in business. Maybe we should privatize the whole government. I mean, if they can't figure out how to change a bad system, maybe those in business should tell them how to do it. Like unemployment compensation it's been the same for years. And all they change is the number of weeks someone can receive it. Their new idea is to add more weeks. You've heard that every 4 years or whatever. Well, that's brilliant. And this is from people we elected who said they could solve these problems during their campaigns. So they're stuck on the theory that if they increase the length of time people are on unemployment, it'll help their job prospects. I don't know. I'm just an average Joe, but I get a headache just trying to figure out how these people put these thoughts together, how they're thinking. The only way job prospects are going to be increased is create jobs. So why not use the money to increase the demand for employees instead of using it to decrease the incentive to get off unemployment? You know, there are tens of millions of small businesses that could absorb all the unemployed who want to work. So instead of increasing the time in billions we're spending on unemployment payments, why don't we give the money to small businesses to hire and train the unemployed and create new jobs? Just think of all the economic stimulation that would occur if these small businesses just hired one extra person to increase their productivity. Maybe the small business could kick in a few bucks so that the new employee can make more with a job than they would sitting around waiting for one. And the business can have a new employee for a fraction of what they'd usually spend, so it'd be cost effective for them to expand. And at least we'd have a chance of getting people back to work. But for sure, giving corporations money to prevent layoffs doesn't create jobs and won't protect jobs in the future. It's money going to inefficient corporations that can't survive without government help. And instead giving it to a small business businesses that have proven they can survive without a government bailout. And if my business, for example, got a $300 check or whatever it is to hire a worker, I'm sure I'd be willing to pay another $200 a week to get an employee that I could train to help my business grow and will have a job after his unemployment runs out. and not having the government spend all that money on workforce training. Are you kidding me? That'll save a hell of a lot of money too. But obviously the folks who are representing these elected officials, these people we put in office representing us in Washington, can't figure all this stuff out. And it's offensive to me to have them try to fool us average Joes and Janes with their lies and easy answers on both sides of the issue. They'd rather spend their time thinking of ways to spin the desperate job situation by claiming they spent billions saving jobs. Or even more ridiculous is when they announce success since fewer additional people were filing unemployment claims than before. I mean, did you hear that one? They turned continued failure into, quote, a positive sounding favorable trend, a favorable trend. That's what they're talking about now. And that's all government talk. In the language of us average Joes, it means more people are still losing their jobs, but at a slower rate because most of the people are already unemployed. And a lot of them have quit looking for work. In all these years we put up with not holding these fraudulent claims accountable. And the sad thing is that they can accomplish something without requiring too much innovation on the part of government. That's as simple as a jobs program that just involves the way we distribute unemployment compensation. It's basically the same thing with the minimum wage. Why not let the government pay for the increases? Raising the minimum wage that employers have to pay is just going to cost jobs and cut profits. And yet with the economy as it is, people that make the current minimum have difficulty paying their bills. So the arguments on both sides of the issue make sense. But if these minimum wage folks received raises, they'll be spending that money in their communities to improve the economy as well as contribute more in taxes. And the small businesses don't get hurt as bad because as they think since the minimum wage employees will have more money to spend in their business and in other small businesses. So it's multiplying. But if the money comes from employers, there's not much chance of any employee expansion. And then consider the percentages paid for labor being driven up by raising the minimum, and they'll probably have to let some people go. Problem is, according to these politicians, they can't seem to find an answer. They can't seem to find a balance. They can't seem to find a compromise. They can't seem to come up with the right solution. But once again, the answer is that when the government decides that something has to be done, it needs to bite the bullet to do it. We need to have the government pay for the raises. They can give business owners tax credits to balance the cost of wage increases. Or why not increase that earned income tax credit for employees? Of course, then they have to make the government more efficient to pay for it. Just like small businesses and the rest of us have to do every day to fund increases in government that we get charged for. If they keep thinking we can do it, we need to start thinking that they can do it too. Let's share the pain. What do I know? I'm just an average Joe trying to pay my bills and balance my checkbook. These guys are in Congress.